when I first opened the gallery, it was to do picture framing and sell posters and have a studio. So Miami at that time, there was a stronghold of 5 or 6 wealthy galleries on King Concourse that were selling New York school, Jasper Johns, and it was a very kind of closed system, very elite, very social, and very small. And I don't remember if there were, I think the Low Art Museum and maybe the Metropolitan Art Museum were the only art museums. And I remember when I first arrived, FIU had a museum and they were advertising a show of Giacometti. And I loved Giacometti, so I drove all the way out to FIU campus to this odd space, and there were these huge photographs of Giacometti sculptures. It's like, okay, now I know where I am. It was a kind of an aspiration to ultimately be something, which it ultimately has become, but it's a long way. And it made me appreciate Philadelphia and the Northeast in terms of resources. It was a farm. It was the strong multicultural influences were probably then and now the most interesting thing to me. That mix, that pretty raw mix, was I think you could trace the cultural evolution of Miami to the political and cultural, the impact that sort of immigrants had here as different groups landed and over time impacted what was here. I think that white cracker, South Florida, really nothing much would have happened. Air conditioning happened, and then all this good stuff happened. So I think, so there was absolutely, in my mind, nothing when I got here. Very little to do culturally. There were things, but and they were also on a very provincial basis. The quality wasn't very good. Sadly, to be honest, I'm not sure how much better we are as a community. I think we have much, much, much better institutions, more of them, and the appearance of a lot more. And in some ways, yes, a lot more. But in a lot of other ways, the community, the people who make up the community, I don't think are very supportive of the arts at all. I don't think are aware of it. I think it's a fun and sun community, and it was when I got here, and it still is now. What ultimately attracts people is not necessarily culture. I don't want to move to Miami for the opera or the symphony or the museums. I want to move to Miami to play golf and go to the beach and buy a boat. You can't help it. That is a reality. And that reality, as much as we fantasize and aspire to be these other things, it's going to be a long time. So things like the Mariel boat lift had a huge impact on my life and my business. Different riots in the community also had an impact. There were many, many things that perhaps if they had happened in other cities, the cities are so big and complex that they would have had an impact, but not that much. In Miami, they redefined the whole game every time. So all of the rafters that came were a big thing. When Glasnost happened and Cuba was no longer so connected with Russia, and tons of immigrants came from Cuba, the community changed enormously, and the opportunity to show world-class, well-established artists from Cuba opened a door. So there were many things over time that changed. Then there was interest from outside. So the Rebel family saw an opportunity in Miami in terms of inexpensive warehouse space where they could put their collection, where they could see things that maybe they had had in storage for the last 20 years. And there was the promise of an arts community here. So they also had a huge impact on what was happening, particularly in the visual arts.